Hi, I'm Khe Hy, and I'm a recovering entrepreneur. Yep, I've read all the books. I listened to My First Million and the Tim Ferriss podcast on double speed. And of course, I've got the mandatory hoodie. It took me a long time to go from wantrepreneur to entrepreneur. So what changed? First, I learned how to sell and face the dreaded rejection. Then, instead of listening to podcasts, I went out and talked to actual customers, the ones who pay you money for things. And finally, I built something in my realm of expertise, Wall Street. And you can do that too. In this episode of the Examine Life podcast, I'm joined by the OG entrepreneur, Noah Kagan. Noah was the 30th employee at Facebook before he got fired. He was the 4th employee at Mint.com. And he started AppSumo, which does $80 million a year in revenue. Oh, and he also wrote $1 Million Weekend, a kick-ass book on entrepreneurship. So we discuss how to get rich while having a full-time job. We cover the trade-offs of leaving a high-paying job for entrepreneurship, how to launch real side projects while you actually have a job, and business models that don't involve having an original idea. I hope you enjoy this episode.
I want to talk to you about this idea of post-achievement professional later in the show as well, Noah.
It reminds me of like encore career. It's like after you get rich, you call it an encore career. So just to plug your coaching, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What's like, who's your favorite student or someone who's gone through it that they're most proud of?
Ooh, I would say that I'm most proud of. I mean, usually it's folks that walk away from W-2 incomes of over $1.5 million. And usually it's because why I'm most proud of them is they tend to be in their early 30s. They tend to come from backgrounds that have an embedded scarcity mindset. So like kids of immigrants, usually. This is the job that they thought would solve all of their life problems. It would help them find a romantic partner. It would make their inner critic shut up. It would cure their perfectionism. It would null their fear of rejection. And it's terrifying. And that no one says this is a good idea to leave, except me. I don't even say it's a good idea, but I like push on the assumption. So there's been a handful of those clients. And then the other category I would say, and it will be a little gender specific, is there's a lot of dads that have kids or they become new dads and they say, I'm going to take a pause in this season. I'm going to downshift the work hours. I'm going to downshift the income because I want to be here for these. I want to be there for the pickups. I want to be there for the bath times. I want to be there for that. And then I'll turn it back on. And I think that pushes against so many preconceived narratives about what it means to be a dad, what it means to be a primary breadwinner, or in some of those cases. And you're swimming upstream and there's a lot of head scratching going on around you.
That's great.
This is going to be fun. You're going to be like interviewing me. I love this.
Dude, I just hang out with my Jewish mother for the weekend. It's like nonstop questions. She even just questioned me before I got on the show. How's the interviews going? I'm like, what I'm noticing from especially high earners, like, you were making, it sounds like I don't know if you share that number publicly.
Yeah, I do share it publicly.
Can you share that again? Because that blew my mind.
Yes. So when I was 31 years old, so like 3 really good years, I made like 31, 32, 33. It was 1.3 million, 2.3, and then 1.7. And then I quit in W-2 income. I quit after that last year. Now, keep in mind that there's deferred stock and all that. So you probably take the cash from that is about 40% that you take in that year. But 40% of 2.3 is a big number.
That's still, I mean, I remember when I first got my first $1 million check to myself.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's cool. No one really ever celebrates it except you, which is also another interesting thing. No one cares because they care about themselves. But and then what was the first amount you made that next year after that last big payday?
So it was a negative. I made 0, or I think I made 10 grand because I was semi-sabbaticaling, and I didn't really have a business. So since then though, and feel free to prod, but since then, so that I left, and in the 9 years, the earnings have been combined 1.1 million over 9 years. So about 100, whatever that math is, 120,000 a year.
That
which
is
is funny,
amazing.
which is weird. Well, actually, I want you to react to that.
Well, no, everyone's got different reactions. Whenever someone takes their own initiative to choose their own life and I would say get out of the middle class path, middle class lane, and at least try. Like, I'm always admiring that, and I respect that. And the two things we talked about a little bit, but it compounds. I think people don't talk about compound business where, that was 1.1 million over 9 years, but same with AppSumo.com. My first year I made 0, then 42. And then after about 7 or 8 years, finally, then it was $1 million. And now it's, it's 1 to 3 million a year, depending on how well we do.
Yeah.
For a lot of people who are high earners in day jobs, it's so hard to make money on the side because you make like 10,000 your first year as a side hustle, when I don't recommend people quit their jobs like you do, which is to me sounds risky. But it's so small that they're like, I just can't stick with it, especially when you got kids and a wife and, you got soccer practice to go to. But one of the things I was curious about is that you made that money. How was your time in that same period, and your, I guess, job satisfaction?
Yeah. So the job satisfaction was probably, it was decent. I was probably like 6.5 out of 10. So like definitely like better than average. It wasn't particularly high stress because the hours were fixed. They were long, but they were fixed. Like I said, 7 to 7. But like once you kind of clocked out, you clocked out.
Well, clocked out? What do you mean? You clock out, it's bedtime.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, dude, I was on a coaching call with someone. I was pitching him, and he worked in finance, and it was 6 p.m. his time. And I was like, hey, so you're going to go back to work after this? And he's like, yeah, I think I have another 5 hours. It was 35 years old. So it's, but look, that's the thing. Everything is relative in that, like when so the first 10 like 10 years or 7 years, I was working like 80 to 100 hours a week. And so then then it was like the first 5 years, someone could pick up the phone at literally any point of the day, like Saturday, 6 a.m. and be like, hey, I need you to come into the office. And you had like an hour to be there. And so it was like zero freedom. So when I say it was like 12 hours, but no one could call me in after 7 p.m., I was like, I'm on vacation. It literally felt like vacation because it's the different levers of time freedom, man.
Yeah. I wonder in finance, I always reflect like how much do people feel satisfied about the work they're doing? Like it's very hard work, but it's kind of spreadsheet work.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with entrepreneurship, what's always gotten exciting to me is you can really ultimately control your time. You have unlimited upside. Like in finance, there is, you get these dividends or profit shares and all that stuff, but the upside of entrepreneurship is really unlimited. And I think what I've tend to find is that the work feels more satisfying. Like you're actually creating something. Maybe it's a coaching thing, or maybe like AppSumo.com. It's like a software e-commerce store for entrepreneurs with deals. But it's something where I think you feel like you're adding a little bit more than you came to this planet with. And the reality, what I was kind of highlighting for you and me, is that when I started 14 years ago, it wasn't immediate that it wasn't immediate that I got paid a payday.
Yeah.
But the overall like life satisfaction, time satisfaction, when I was doing satisfaction, then over time, just sticking with it like you did as well, like it's now starting to pay off where if you want to do soccer practice, or I don't want to do anything before noon, or I'm having a kid in the next few months.
Congrats.
I want to be able, because which is wild. I'm glad in my 20s, I was kind of running around without any idea, and I'm still running around, but with a little better idea. Yeah. But at least now I have the time and the ability to fully control my schedule.
Yeah. Well, to go back to the satisfaction, I think it's the thing about finance that I actually miss a lot is that there are so many. It's intellect. It can be an intellectual blood sport of sorts, because there are let's say like you're analyzing stocks, right? There's so many variables. There's so many ways to like get a little, what they call edge. And if you're an intellectually curious person and you're willing to turn over, like a little bit like an entrepreneur, if you're willing to turn over, like people would do channel checks where you would, pretend to be a buyer. Like, let's say you're like investing in Lululemon. I'm making this up. I never did this. So you're like pretending to invest in Lululemon. You'd be like, hey, I'm Joe from, Macy's, and I want to place a large order of Lululemon. Like, how's business going? Like, how, like you could hustle however you did. Like there was people would fly drones over the parking lots of amusement parks to count how many cars there were to see if the traffic, well, like
Cool.
if the, so like there is like that entrepreneurial grit in that and that creativity. And the reason why a lot of people like finance is because the results, not the payoffs, but the results of your bets can be seen very quickly. A little bit like Facebook ads or like Google SEO, maybe like a little longer tail, things like that. But I will say people find it intellectually stimulating. But here's the thing, though. I think that, like I was asking someone, a director at a large bank, which is probably like a director would probably be someone in their 30s, like early 30s, early to mid 30s. A director at a large bank, I was like, how much do you think they make? And they're like, average person, not like a superstar. And they're like $500,000 to $600,000. And so that's an average, that's a median income at in an industry. That's a lot of fucking money, right? I mean, like entrepreneurs, it takes entrepreneurs a long time to make.
Yeah, I guess it's like your risk time frame as well. Risk and time, because like 500 sounds like a lot, but then how many hours are they working?
Yeah,
probably a lot.
Yeah, 80.
And then how much vacation do they actually get to enjoy?
0.
Not as many. And so I think it's like this, I don't know what I would label them as, but like doctors and finance, like where the income is guaranteed and high.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some cost to getting there. And I think there are other ways. I guess the things I was curious for you, was there a way that you could have not totally quit that job and started this type of business that you're doing while having that?
So here's a good story. And for those listening, Noah and I have never met. So this is kind of like our you're basically listening to our first date. So
first date.
You.
Wow.
Thank you. And I'm sorry. So I'm going to try to say it in a way that people haven't heard a million times. But this actually jives with some of the ideas in the book. So I had, despite working 60 hours a week, I was constantly launching experiments. And so I was like, I wonder if I could get 10 people from 10 different industries together for a dinner. Like, will they enjoy that? And the dinner will be fun. And in my head, I was like, maybe I could have like a matchmaking service or a events planning, dinner or a networking service. So that was one thing. I played with all these different little like tech ideas. So I had this, everyone wants to build a personal CRM. So I built this like jacked up personal CRM using these like complicated nested if statements in Google Sheets so that people could like query. It was like Airtable before Airtable came out that I had like replicated in Google Sheets. I wrote a blog about the fashion, like the culture and the concert and the art scene in New York. So I was always trying those things before. And I think the difference was in reading your book was like, I had the luxury that I didn't have a fire under my ass to earn money because I had savings. And I think that in hindsight, I think that that's a double-edged sword. Because in one regards, I could always just be like, I'm doing this for art. Like, this is just my art and I like doing it and I can bankroll myself. Which is good because it helped me play the long game. Like 9 years later, I'm still fucking having as much fun as I was having at the beginning because I never was like, I got to fit this into this like square peg, just to make the next paycheck. On the flip side, though, a lot of the skills that your book is talking about, I don't have. Like, I hate asking people for money. I feel very uncomfortable selling. I feel very uncomfortable promoting myself. I feel very uncomfortable, pre-selling a product that I haven't created on the back end. All of those things give me the heebie-jeebies 9 years into it, which is funny enough. Like, your book found me at the right time because you'd say, well, you've been an entrepreneur for 9 years. You're like, this is probably not meant for you specifically, Khe. I was like, no, dude, you pointed out all the shit that I struggle to do. I'm getting goosebumps and I'm like, this is my I'm going to start being an entrepreneur today at year 9. I'm going to learn to ask for what the fuck I want and like learn how to sell and learn how to deal with rejection.
Two comments on that. One, we started the podcast with you asking people to buy your coaching program. So,
that's true.
No, just to call out, like sometimes we label ourselves like I'm not a good, and what you're talking about $1 Million Weekend for others is the two things holding everyone back from success in entrepreneurship is starting, which you did, and then asking and getting good at that. And those are skills everyone can get better at. And you asked. You asked, which is great. You said, hey, I can help people if you're a rich finance guy generally, but could be anyone, and you want to get out and you need coaching to get the hell out over time, which, I have so many coaches.
Yeah.
I have Dan Putt, who put us in touch, as a coach I pay $5,000 a month to talk with.
Yes.
I would say the other thing that I would not say lightly or take lightly is that most hobbies and art and things that are silly become businesses. Right? You look at, I worked at Facebook, one of the earliest people there. Mark copied, he didn't even invent. He copied another guy's, the two brothers, Connect You site, and copied it in a weekend. And he sent it out to his hall. And he wasn't, planning world domination, which he eventually did. He did plan for that. That was what he talked about at the company. But early on, he was just like, I'm kind of want to meet girls. No, he's a girl. And a lot of these things that are silly and art and fun, it doesn't have to be a business, but I think it's also cool if you can make your life's work something you also enjoy.
Yeah.
I guess, how come you didn't do these? Did you do these experiments while you had your day job? Because that's what I would. To me, it seemed risky to quit the job and then be like, I have to figure this out, versus like, let your job be your investor and get started while you get going on these things. And then when it works, I talk in the book about your freedom number, when it gets there, then quit. I guess, how did you make that decision? And when you're coaching people now, how do you, what are their fears and what do you tell them?
All right. Great question. So I had done those experiments, and I was basically doing them, I was a new dad.
While you had the job.
While I had the job, yes.
Okay.
I was doing them, but I wasn't pushing. I was never thinking about monetization. I was just like trying to do the thing just because it felt cool and interesting and fun. And here's the thing that really tipped the scales for me, Noah, was that I had this demanding job, but I was doing these projects for like 2 hours a day. Like I would wake up, I would set an alarm early to write. I had this thing, it was called flock.io. And it was basically, I wanted to take the Uber model and basically incentivize people to show candidates to headhunters. So let's say like headhunters are like, I'm looking for a CTO. So like anyone could like refer CTOs to the headhunter, and the person that ultimately referred the right CTO that got the person placed by the headhunter would get like 2% of the headhunter's 20%. And so I was like, oh, this is like that's one that I actually wrote a business plan for. The CRM thing, I just like hacked it and I just like built crazy stuff. But the reason why I left was because I was like, I was capped out. I actually ran out of hours in the day without sacrificing my health and sacrificing like who I wanted to be as a dad. And I was like, I need more hours, and I can't. I was like already kind of quiet quitting before that became a meme. I was like a little bit checked out, especially that last year when I knew I was going to leave. But the bet that I made, Noah, was I was like, if I can get this much done with 2 hours a day, imagine how much I could get done with 60 hours a day betting on myself. So I was like, I'm willing to bet 60 hours of my time trying stuff out, knowing that something. So like a bet in my persistence, a bet in my self-trust. And I think secondarily, it was like, I didn't have a huge confidence that I'd have like a great idea. And I was more just like, if you could stay in the game long enough, the idea will emerge.
But you have to be it's like you have a surfboard in the background. It's the same thing, but you're not going to catch a wave sitting on the shore.
Yeah.
Unless there's like sand surfing, which I don't know, maybe that's a new business idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
When people are talking to you today, what are the fears holding them back? Because this is definitely something I'm, working through $1 Million Weekend. It's that same thing. And also, what were you telling yourself this first year where it sounds like you barely made 10,000, which is still great for a first business.
Yeah. Okay. So what do I tell people now? So this is the hard thing, is that when you have a job that's that consuming, you have like every piece of mind space that you have goes to that job, either to like service that job or to get better at that job. Like, and that's what clicked for me on Wall Street after I left. Is like the reason why, like, an average person on Wall Street makes way more than an average person at Google, because Wall Street owns your mind space when you're not at work. And Google, I think I know enough Google engineers. Like, I think that once you go home at Google, you're home, right? And And like, if you want to be proactive and like learn like some new language, like great. It's like, but you're not like, I wonder if my boss is going to email me. I wonder if my boss is going to email me. Like, you could actually go and like play pickleball or day drink and not be scared of like your boss calling you into the office after you've had 4 margaritas. And so I think that's like, that was, that's a difference. So what do I tell people? I think here are the main, actually I just ran a workshop with people like this. So here are the main pain points that the people expressed in this workshop. So they're all group coaching prospects, and they're all kind of Wall Street folks that are making between like $500,000 and like $2 million a year. The first one is, how will I tell my partner? How do I get on the same page with my partner that I can just go and do this? So that's like basically marital alignment, right? In the face of drastically shifting finances. That's the first one. The second one is the scarcity mindset. You'd be amazed that people in that W-2 path, they've never seen their bank account go down. And so that's, I think, a superpower of entrepreneurs is like, it just goes up and down and up and down. And ultimately the trend line is usually in the right direction if you stay in the game. But if you think about it, some of these people I've been working, myself included, I've been earning income since I was 15 years old doing, actually funny enough, I used to make HTML web pages when I was a 15-year-old. $15 an hour in 1995, all cash, baby. But I had seen my bank account go up every single year from age 15 to 35. 20 years of one trend. When it goes flat or it starts to go down, you're not emotionally equipped to handle that. You just aren't. Like it's just like I don't know. It's like seeing a black swan for the first time. You're like, what is that thing? Like, is it going to kill me? Is it going to, So that would be this other thing, and it's exacerbated by kind of the scarcity mindset. Again, there's a lot of like for kids of first generation that are. Their parents were middle class, lower middle class, and now they've shot, their top 0.1%. And so they're still carrying the trace markers of their parents' money fears in their DNA. And maybe it's like legitimately intergenerational trauma, or it's just, they don't know any different. So financial scarcity was the second one. The third one, this one breaks my heart, is like, I don't have any interests outside of my work. Because again,
interesting.
Finances own your mind space for 20 years, right? 15 years. They basically said, you have no hobbies, but I'm going to pay you double what everyone else makes to justify that for you.
Your hobby is work.
Yeah, your hobby is work. And then the last one is the identity piece. It's like finance is, FANG is a very high status. You walk into a PTA meeting, you walk into a country club, you walk into a dinner with new friends, and they're like, oh, you worked on Wall Street, you were a managing director, you were this, like and then they're like, oh, I'm, what are you? You're Chief Sumo. You're like, I'm Chief Sumo.
Well, no, my brother's a doctor, and my mom's like, yeah, I got an entrepreneur, but this one's a doctor.
Exactly.
I know how that goes. And then now it's like, no, but he's a successful entrepreneur. You have to asterisk it.
So
wow, those are powerful, man. Those are definitely a lot.
Yeah.
And then, you try to start a side hustle, or you try to quit and go for it. You're not making $500,000 your first year. Generally not.
Yeah. I haven't even made it in 10 years, in 9 years.
How, when you finally quit, how much did you make your first year? Like actually make?
You mean as an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's basically been 1.1 million over 9 years. It was like 10, 20, 40, 30, kind of like all below 100. And then the last 2 years have been 250.
What changed?
I learned how to sell.
You learned how to ask.
Yeah, I learned how to ask. Yeah, I mean that, and copywriting. I mean, two things that you mentioned in your book. Now, shout out to Neville. Yeah, I think that in the last 3 years, I learned how to think about like, who are my customers, and I think that was when I went from being a blogger hobbyist, like I'm putting out art, And like occasionally I'll ask for stuff. And the last 3 years, I'm like, these are my clients. These are where they're hurting. And this is what I think I can deliver for them. And this is how I can communicate to them that I can deliver it. And that's been the change over the past 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah. What I was thinking about there was you have a great who, right? And most people miss the who, right? Business is really like what, who, and where. So we talked about in the book. And yeah, I guess where I was curious, how much does it cost for a coaching session with you?
Coaching session is about, it's 15 grand for 3 months.
Yeah, because these people make $500,000, right? And it's funny you talk about them going to PTA meetings. They don't have time for a PTA meeting. Like they have to have their significant other or their assistant go. But I think what's interesting, you know, and the reason $1 Million Weekend to me resonates so much because it's like exactly your point. Like we don't have a lot of time, and if you got kids, if you're working these jobs, and I love how for you, I think people just don't realize that there are other paths.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in finance and you're good at spreadsheets, you can go do that at a startup.
Yeah.
Right. You can do like Sean is a really good, Sean who runs all of our revenue. He's phenomenal. He's like he watches the Excel championships, you know, like he's exceptional at that.
Yeah.
And I think for you, you know, you found customers, one, who are rich, right? That's always easier to make money off of people who have money. And then you found a pain point where they want to leave and that you can actually, by your own learnings, like solve your own problem. And then guess what? There's probably other people who have that problem too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think it would have been possible for you to kind of get this going or supporting or coaching people while you kept a job? Is there any way that could have, because I think that's my whole hypothesis is that people can. So I thought it was risky. One, to have a job you hate seemed risky for 40 years. And then I didn't want to enjoy life at 60 and not over, right? That seemed kind of weak. But I didn't want to, I don't know, wait. I didn't want to have to like, okay, I have to quit this job and I have to figure it out. That felt almost too risky too. So it was like, all right, well, I'm going to try a lot. And I love that you were trying things. I think that's where most people never feel ready.
Yeah.
They're just like, I'm going to prepare more. And it's like, again,
what do you call entrepreneurs?
There are entrepreneurs out there. I'm trying to, you know, in this woke culture, they're aspiring entrepreneurs is the new politically correct phrase. Well, I think sometimes it's fine to be shamed. Like if you need to be shamed for motivation, it's good.
I pick on that group often because I have this old productivity matrix with like 10K work, which you might have seen, but basically $100 work is high leverage, low skill. So it's a quadrant, high leverage, low skill. It's like basically you're amplifying the wrong thing. And so that's like these like fancy productivity systems, getting things done, superhuman app, like a fancy landing page and all that, or like writing a business plan. And I'd actually want to ask you is like, I was reading all of the critiques or the things that entrepreneurs shouldn't do, which I just list, but basically like trademark your idea, patent your idea, things like that. Everyone I would say many people listening to this, as soon as they have an idea, their next action is like spend 3 months researching it. And like researching it, like academically researching it, like reading about it, like spreadsheet work, modeling the revenue.
Get the drone out, which is, I'm not against that stuff, right? I think that's what I think they believe is what they're supposed to do. Right? Like, oh, I guess this is one way of approaching business. And let's even take your idea. Hey, I want to help finance people explore entrepreneurship. You, while you kept that job, could have talked to a few of your colleagues over beers, which you guys do, or tea, whatever, and said, hey, this weekend, guys, why don't we do a workshop? You could call them, text them, no website, nothing. Why don't we do a workshop where we try to brainstorm and get something going, which sounds like that's even what you actually did. I'm going to take care of food. I'm going to have an agenda. I'm going to research different things and I'll bring it so we can actually have a 48-hour finance bro workshop. You guys mind like Venmo or, dividend stock me $100 each? I'm teasing you guys.
Yeah.
I was in a cold plunge in a sauna this morning. Okay. I'm a tech bro. Relax everyone.
You take your cold plunge. I'll take my dividends.
You have a lifetime subscription to Microsoft Excel. So, and then in a weekend, right, you could see like, wow, a lot of other finance people maybe are interested in leaving and they don't know what else to do too, right? And you didn't build a website. And by doing that, you could either find out no one wanted it or, holy crap, there's a really clear demand here. And, business takes time to get the dividends.
Yeah,
it really does. and then finding something. You know, I would say a lot of my success, one, was trying so many things that did not work. One of my, masturbationssock.com. No one's bought one yet. It's just a sock. freecalls2.com, my blog, conferences, same as you, it sounds like, where we tried a lot of things. You find something that people are excited about, and you can try these things every weekend, which we all have.
Yeah.
And then I'd say part of my success, I found something that people wanted, and then I just stuck with it. And I would say that the wind carried my back, where this market for software and people wanting software just got a lot bigger. And so it's also being mindful. Are you choosing a $1,000 opportunity or $1 billion opportunity?
Yeah.
If it's a bigger opportunity, like if you're just around it, you're going to do a lot better.
Can I give you a real-time case study? Because this is a bunch of finance people still working have come to me, and they're like, and I get this, they're like, we see AI, generative AI, to be a huge thing. What's that? Yeah, I love AI.
No, it's so, everyone's chasing
so cliche.
it, which makes me want to dislike it.
Well then play along.
No, bring it. Bring the case study. And I'll share another story as well, but bring the case study, please.
And the case study is that in finance, it's not particularly innovative. And so if something new comes in like AI, it's like, oh, let's set up a committee to evaluate AI. And then like, let's bring compliance in. And they're like, no, ChatGPT is going to steal all our stuff. And so basically it's like 18,000 obstacles. And then like eventually, like finance people just started wearing jeans to work like 3 years ago. So it's like, that just gives you like how the timelines work, right? They're like, oh, I guess people don't wear suits anymore or business casual. So someone's at a firm and they want, one of their ideas is like, we could save so much time as marketers if we used AI, but no one cares.
Totally.
So this person's got this, great job, but this interest and kind of sees like the inklings of an opportunity. Yeah. What would be the next couple steps for them?
For sure. So a few things there. Committees. I was writing down just a few notes. Committees are where, ideas go to die. Like anytime at AppSumo, someone's like, we're forming a committee. I'm like, oh, that's going to fail. It's going to take forever to get any decision made. I think especially for finance, think about what your expertise is. And what happens in business is I'm very good at spreadsheets. I'm good at modeling. I'm good at analytical thinking. I have this network of rich finance other people. Let me start a business in women's clothing, which it could totally work. Fine. I'm not against it, but maybe do it. How do you leverage the thing you're actually good at and what you have access to? Mm-hmm. So for instance, there's a guy, Jake, who sounds like a lot of your people, and he's a project manager, makes 6 figures, and he's a golfer though. So his business that he followed through $1 Million Weekend was a golf business. Mm-hmm. And he got that going in a weekend. Now, I do have to share, because your earlier question was, talking about ideas. There's someone who's in the Air Force that contacted me and said, I have an idea about baby clothing that grows with the baby. And I was like, that's a cool idea. That's a super cool idea. And then he Googled it and he's like, oh, someone already did it. And I was like, you know what someone else has done? Everything.
Yes.
And the research and the time, right? You give yourself a month, you'll psych yourself out. No. Right? It's like, when you're about to jump off the diving board and you look over and you go back and you look over and you go back. If you just jumped, you're like, oh, it wasn't as scary as I thought. And that's what a lot of life is, right? It's, what's this thing I'm a little scared of? Maybe I could face it and then realize it's not so bad. And I think that's what entrepreneurship, not even think, that is entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a big jump. It doesn't have to be this. For me, I was never a quit my job and kind of have to make it work thing. Now, let's talk about this AI and finance people thing. One of the number one problems that you're talking about, and this is also a problem for engineers, is they take solutions and they look for problems.
Okay.
No one cares about your solution at all. They don't care. You think anybody wakes up thinking about AI? No. They think my wife is upset with me. I'm trying to do this financing. It's taking me 6 hours. I cannot get a babysitter at night. I'm having trouble rebalancing my portfolio. They have problems. And so the number one thing that I would encourage anyone to really be thinking about is, how do you start with the problem part, customer first, who the customer is? Ideally, you are that customer too. Yeah. You should always be your first. And the second customer, that it's a problem they're excited to pay you for, or they're excited to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then come with a solution. Too many times now, AppSumo.com, it's the number one site online for software deals. We have so many AI products. Very few of them are exceptionally sold, right? It's really is the Pareto principle of very few are selling them, most of them. But the ones that are working are like very specific. Like with this one called Chatbase, it replaces your whole customer support team.
Wow.
Or Cast Magic. Cast Magic replaces your entire podcast team.
Cast Magic's great.
And so those are problems that are very painful or people are excited about. Now, for a finance person, I would say, and you make $1 million a year, you don't even have to be technical, right? So I think one of the things I've been thinking about is how do you just document things going on as a way of creating a business?
Ooh.
You don't even have to be the innovator of it, right? So if you're in finance and you're curious about AI, or you're curious about gardening, or you're curious about home maintenance or cameras or microphones, you can create a very large business as a content creator or even as a website documenting these specific things. And so sometimes, and what I want people to think about, like I've had more success as a platform, I would say, right? AppSumo is a platform where I'm not trying to choose the AI winners. I'm just trying to say, here's different cool AI tools that we like at great prices. And so thinking about that within finance and other areas where I don't know which AI tool is going to win, but I'll at least create a space where I can talk about different ones, and maybe one will win, but that's not necessarily what I'm as worried about.
Got it. So when you say document, you mean like a wire cutter style curation,
Twitter,
reviews,
YouTube,
whatever.
And again, then what most people might say, Khe, is, well, I don't want to be public. Okay, fine, don't. That's okay, right? Find someone else who will. Like that's an option. Or again, with all these things, I think one of the things that maybe you're discounting that you did, Khe, is you try something every single weekend, because it's not going to work every time. Like think about all these people that we admire. We're like, oh, look at whoever. Maybe it's Bezos. Maybe it's your, grandfather who had a restaurant. They also fail a lot, right? Like this morning, my new house manager quit. Last Monday, my VP of finance quit. We tried different marketing campaigns. We tried advertising on Twitter, probably spent $100K, totally flopped.
Yeah.
Right. That's like in the last month.
Yeah.
And so realizing that's part of this process and enjoying it and saying, hey, I know I'm making all this money, but I have a dream. Future me is thinking, and this is what I think about a lot. Like future me is going to thank me. What is future me going to thank me for today? Right? Because especially in finance, you're making so much money, right? It's hard to let that go. So don't let it go, but plant that seed today that you're going to be enjoying and eating in 5 years when you have time to live how you want to live.
Yeah.
So it could be documenting it. It could be something, it could be outside of finance, but I would think that what's in your skill set that you've already gotten paid for. Maybe it's teaching people Excel. Maybe it's teaching how to do strategy in startups or finance and startup strategy.
Yeah.
I think it's thinking about what do you have access to within your audience and your skills that you've gotten paid for.
Yeah.
And exploring that in a, limited time in a safe way, ideally on a weekend, if you have an hour free.
Yeah. Two things that I love everything. I could have benefited from this like 9 years ago. The thing that you said that was beautiful that I want to like click into was in that AI AI for marketers or in AI for hedge fund professionals. That's AI is the solution. What's the problem? And the problem, and this is, you asked what changed. I think part of what changed in my entrepreneurial journey is in the past 2 to 3 years, I've started to pay way more attention to what the problem is. And before it was a lot of spaghetti and like hoping the spaghetti landed on the problem. And so the problem might be like, every week I have to write this report and it takes way too fucking long. Can AI make that report faster? Or, can we change the report, or can we automate it? Or, there's like, do we even need the report? Right. And so I think that's a powerful framing that I hadn't even like realized. The second thing that I might just mirror back is this element of curation, discovery, sharing. It feels like now, and you would know better than me, like I love Netflix shows that have like drug dealers. And so like Narcos and Breaking Bad and Top Boy. It's actually hard for me to go find a list of all the Netflix shows that involve drug dealing. And like, granted, that's like a bit of a niche market, so to speak. But all of this, I think so often I'm like, God, if someone could curate for me like what to watch on streaming, that that understands me, it knows that I'm a driven entrepreneurial guy who likes product of the 90s, who likes, throw anything that's throwback sports, anything with a lens of business and, references cultural throwbacks to like relics of the 80s and 90s. That's a pretty big group of people, right? It's also known as like Gen X male professionals, right? So I love how you're just like, yeah, you could try to build the tool, or you can showcase the tool,
You don't have to
curate the
build the
tool.
tool.
Yeah.
Well, a few things I was curious about. Once I've got fired, and I've been fired twice, it was a realization that jobs aren't safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you have this finance job making big bucks, are you deciding your income? Can you control your livelihood? No. Unless you're at the top, there's going to be someone above you saying one day, hey, Mark or Noah, and I've been fired by Mark and I've been fired by Aaron. Those are the two names I had to talk to where they fired me. And that was a realization where I at least wanted the option to be in control of my time and my future. And so I don't know. I do wonder, for someone like yourself, can you always go back and get that job? Probably, right? Again, I don't encourage anyone to quit before they get to their freedom number, which can be, freedom number is the number you need to quit, 10,000, 20,000. The other thing I just want to highlight about problems, I talked to a guy today. He created AI for podcast guests. So for someone like yourself, Khe, you would pay and you would get research document on me before I come on.
Okay.
And so I said, that's cool. That's kind of a problem. That's like a light problem.
Yeah.
But like, what's a real problem? Right. And again, this is what you need to explore in a business owner, because I think you've noticed your first few years, you were like, I either didn't want to ask for it, or it wasn't something people were excited to pay you for, really.
Yep.
And I said, you have a podcast. What's really painful? He's like, oh, I wish more people would listen to me. Oh, tell me more about that. And again, it's like, okay, now you're moving up the value chain of things that people are excited to now pay. You don't have to convince him. You don't have to sell him. And it's funny. You're talking about this curated Netflix thing.
Yeah.
It's also interesting when people talk about things. Like, if you ever want to do a business, here's an easy way to approach anyone. Talk to someone and just ask for feedback and say, hey, I'm thinking about this Netflix idea. This is, I've always had this problem. What do you think? Right. And ideally, you're talking to someone who you think is that ideal customer. Now, what I recommend doing is that you talk to them, you find out it's a problem, you present something that actually solves their problem, and they'll say, oh my God, that's great. And then you transition it. And at the end you say, well, I'll actually build it. I'll every week for the next 2 months, I'll send you a video on Friday. Do you want to pay me, something even silly, just to that I know you're serious. You want to drop me $20 or drop, you guys finance people, drop me 1,000. Do you guys have nicknames for money? Like, drop me.
Yeah. Bucks is million.
$5. Yeah, drop me like $0.25. And what happens, it's really interesting. You ask for the money and then they're like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I really care about it that much. Oh, okay. How come? What would make it a no-brainer for you? And then you realize that it's not that important for them.
Yeah.
And that is business, right? It's finding the thing that people are excited to give up their time, right? Because it takes money. You have to give up your time to get your money. So I have to give this up for something. And most people are very sensitive to that. So finding something they're excited to solve a problem that matters to them. Yeah. So for you, I think you found a great problem, which is tons of people have a lot of money in this finance world, but maybe that's not what they actually want to do when they finally get there.
Yeah.
And how do they do it in a safe way with support, which is what you're coaching them on?
Yeah. No, thank you. Can you go back? So one of the biggest unlocks, I didn't do it, but I'm going to do it. You have this exercise in the book where you go to a Starbucks or you go to a store, and then it's like, oh, I would like a venti latte, and they give you the venti latte, and then you're about to pay, and you say, can I have 10% discount? Can I have a 10% discount on this? Can you explain it better than?
Yeah, let me explain it. But before I even get to it, when are you going to commit to doing it?
I'll do it by Monday. Today is Monday. I'll do it in a week. Is that fair?
Sir, remind me to follow up with Khe next Monday about the coffee challenge.
There you go.
All right. So I'll follow up with you next Monday. You can also do it tomorrow. So let me present the idea about the idea behind it. If you work in finance, if you could get better at asking, you'll make more money. That's easy to understand, because you can go to your boss and say, let me show you how I'm making you more money. And because I'm making you more money, I'm going to ask you for a raise. And so the more that people, what I've identified for myself and through literally tens of thousands of others, if you get better at starting and asking, it'll help you in entrepreneurship, but really it'll help you in everything in life. Good. And so how do you practice asking so it's not so scary? And then you realize the upside of an ask is really unlimited. And I say it because it's true. You can get a raise, you can get a wife, you can get a job, you can get a customer, you can get a second customer. You can make $250,000 a year like you did when you started asking. And so one of the challenges in the book has a lot of, Million Dollar Weekend has a lot of these fun kind of games, I would say, where it's not so serious. And how do we practice asking? How do we practice getting rejected and the fear of failure and realizing it's not so painful? So you go to Starbucks or anytime you buy anything. And what I recommend, a lot of people will say, I'm super experienced in sales. Great. Then do it. It'll be easy. Or I'm afraid. Great. Do it. You'll feel good about yourself. Okay. Everyone can do it. And you go to Starbucks or anywhere you buy anything, frankly, but coffee's universal, and you ask for 10% off. And they're going to look at you real strange. And I did it last week. And it's not that I'm not afraid. Yep. I'm still afraid, but I do it anyways. That's what courage is. It's being afraid and doing it anyways. And they ask you why. And you can, if you really want to make it hard, don't say anything. That's what I do. Or if you want to make it easier, you can say, hey, this guy, Noah Kagan, I'm doing a $1 million weekend challenge. He said, I need to ask for a discount. Then they'll look at their boss. He'll be like, they'll be like, I don't know. And they'll say, nah, sorry. And you're like, and then you walk off. You get your coffee, orange mocha frappuccino. And I always ask the same question. What did you learn about yourself? And there's a gentleman named Stetson who heard me talking about this on a show. And he's like, all right. And again, that's why I always ask people to commit before you go. Because otherwise you'll just keep going. And it's the same thing with being ready for business or ready for life. Like, all right, I'll do it next week. Why don't you just do it today?
Yeah.
Like, that's why
I made up a million excuses. I wanted to do it before this episode. We're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to, because I deem Starbucks safer than I've been inside a commercial establishment 50 times since we scheduled this podcast. But I'm like, no, I'm going to go to this Starbucks because I know the kind of people that are there.
What were you? So this is the whole practice, right? On my YouTube channel, I do it to ask people to go on private jets or ask people to go on their yacht. That's really uncomfortable. Or ask first class passengers, and I have the same fear. But I'm curious, what was the fear that's been holding you back there?
I care so much that people see me as a good person. Like he's a good, whatever that means. We could distill that into what is good, moral, kind, loving, sane, and any rejection. I could get 100 pieces of feedback and 99 of them are 5-star and one is 1-star. And I'm like, that 1 star hurts so bad because I'll give you a 10-second story. It was the only time I've ever done a guided psychedelic experience. I was shaking violently in sweating, and for what felt like an hour, all I kept saying is, I just want to be a good boy. I just want to be a good boy. I have this childlike need to for people to think that I'm a good person. I'm getting a little teary-eyed just thinking about that. And so in that moment when the cashier looks at you funny, that's going to just that entire part of me will just light up on fire. I know it, but I also have done enough work to know that I am good. Whether I get a 1-star rating or get rejected in my, coffee challenge, but it's still that I'm not free yet. I'm not free yet.
Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Everyone has that.
Yep.
Right. And that's the thing that's actually holding them back from what they get. Right. Yep. If you can ask for it, you can get what you want. And a silly coffee, maybe you save 30 cents. And I asked Stetson, I said, hey man, what'd you learn about yourself? And he's like, it wasn't as scary as I thought. Yeah. And there's a lot more that I can do out there.
Love that.
And it's so silly, right? It's just a coffee. And then you realize it's not about the discount. Some people are like, I got more discount. I don't care about your discount.
Yeah. It's not about it.
Discount's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's more recognizing, and as we do it in that, then when you're starting a business, which you can change your life in 48 hours, you can ask a coworker or a past coworker or a friend or a colleague or anybody really, hey, I got this idea. I love your feedback. What do you think about it? And then now that you've practiced it in small ways, when you do it in this way, where maybe there's an upside that you have now a new business and a new life, and the downside is a rejection that you've already practiced.
Yeah.
You realize we're the ones creating this big scary monster, and the big scary monster is actually really small.
Yeah.
And the self-worth that you can feel from it is very powerful.
Yeah. No, I believe you, because I have had my own journey of learning to ask for more and to ask like, hey, I think you'd be a great customer for this. And there's just a lot of rejection when you ask people for money. It just, that's the way it goes. And then you're like, no, they're like, I still love you, man. They're like, cool, but not, not you depersonalize it. So
yeah, the ego. I think when we can separate the ego, and it's not about you being a good boy or not.
Yeah.
It's that this person has other things going on, and it's not that important for them, and that's okay. But guess what? They're out of 250,000. There's tens of thousands of people, it seems like, so far that are very excited for your help. And what we have to work on is if we get one rejection, it doesn't mean it's all over. It just means that one person we can help. Who's next that we can help?
Yeah, absolutely. Last question I wanted to ask you is, we think a lot about what it means to lead a life well lived. Can you talk about how entrepreneurship has helped you, where it's helped you lead a fulfilling life, and because we've talked a lot about the good side of it, but like, where has it prevented, like, where has it held you back from living a life well lived?
Yeah. Entrepreneurship for me has been the best way to ever learn about myself in all aspects. I do a self-review every week, and one of the questions I asked was, like, consistent. And on Friday, I do YouTube. This whole month, I'm doing free office hours on YouTube, and someone asked me about our rev share, and for some reason that triggered me. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm triggered. Like, let me reflect on that. Right. And that's because I have a review every week that it helped me put that in perspective. And so entrepreneurship definitely,
I'd say,
about
the rev share.
I think we care so much, and they're just thinking we're greedy, and it feels like we're taking more than we're giving.
It's like the good boy thing. It's a different flavor of it.
Yeah, I think most of us want to feel liked. I think as I've gotten older, and especially through entrepreneurship, it's more, how do I like myself?
Yeah.
So I think in my 20s and my early 30s, it was like, I need more fame, or I need more money, or I want to prove Zuckerberg wrong. And I would say my swings of my feelings were higher and lower.
Yeah.
Right. And my feelings of self-worth were much lower. I lived on floors for a year, even though I was making 100,000 a year as a salary. I was living on floors because it's like, I could save money and it's fine. And I think through entrepreneurship and, doing things over time, going to therapy, working on things I actually want to work on, that slowly really increased my own self-worth. It's not an overnight thing, as we talked about. So I would say the best thing about entrepreneurship is this chance to learn about who you can actually become. And I will say, I do believe most people are closer to who they can be than they realize. They think it's like some crazy gap, and it could take time, but the gap is actually smaller. And my friend Tynan always says that to me. And he's like, dude, so much closer, and life is so much better than you ever even realize. And so, yeah, there's definitely been swings. I would say as I'm getting older, the swings are my baseline of happiness is higher.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm not chasing as much. I'm not like, I need more money and I need more. It's like, it's more than enough. And so the baseline is higher, and then the swings are lower. Like, I'm still probably having, I think about this a lot. I'm still probably having the same amount of problems, but my perspective on the problems has changed. Right? Because I'm not rushing. And I think the phrase I always think about is pause and respond. That's something that in the past few years I've worked on, where I didn't pause and respond with this office hours, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Next time I will be more mindful. Like, how do I pause and respond? And so again, a lot of examination, like going to therapy, I work with a business coach and a CEO coach. So I think coaches like yourself, for whatever people are trying to work on, are a cheat code.
Yeah.
And I like who I've become. Someone asked me about a month ago, they're like, do you feel like it's so cool? You have this superpower. If you need to make money, you can just make it. And I think in the past I'd feel self-conscious about that. Like, no, I can't do it. And even putting together $1 Million Weekend, I was like, well, I definitely can't do it. So I should hire some other person to really do the work for me. And, entrepreneurship in life is really finding out who you can become.
Yeah.
And that's, and there is work, right? And work, when people say, like, do the work, I'm like, what do you talk about? What's this work? Where is it? Is it on Amazon? Can I buy it? Is it on Etsy or some shit? But the work is like, what's the thing you really want? And is there some work that I have to go do, and then really facing it? And then don't, maybe not all of it all at once, but something small that you can start today, right now. So the book, it was the same thing. It was like, all right, wow, I can actually write this book, and I can actually talk to people, and I can help them change their lives in a short period of time. I would say, the business is the best way to learn about yourself and really feel good about yourself. Because a business like what you're doing, what I'm doing, you're helping another person. Like whether you mow their lawn, whether you clean their pool, whether you help them quit their job so they're doing the real job, whether you're promoting their software so they have more customers, like it's providing a service to another person. And the byproduct is I get to live the life I want. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. I do. Reflecting back on what you said, there was this great quote from, I think I heard it indirectly about Viktor Frankl. He's like, in between, there's the stimulus and the response, and there's a space in between the two. And that's where you find, I think it's like peace, love, and freedom. And I'm with you. I get triggered a lot, but the response now is the space between them is actually not as violent as it used to be in the past. And the response is, usually just like a little kitten's purr or something at this point in my life. And to wrap, I do attribute that to entrepreneurship because it's kind of always throwing a little bit of a curveball at you every single day. Whereas in corporate, it's almost like there's no curve, it's just like fastballs down the middle. And you're like, cool. And like you can hit home runs off a fastball down the middle. But like the minute you get thrown a changeup, you're like, what the fuck is this? And you like totally like,
oh yeah, it's an amazing journey. And you get, being public, which I would recommend everyone to do because it creates, a brand or an option for you. If you do want to quit your job, you can start that today. And it also creates a way where you meet interesting people.
Yeah.
Like I think that's probably one of the best parts of entrepreneurship. I'm meeting guys from Poland, or I'm meeting women doing entrepreneurship, just like such a variety.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
It's available.
I love that. Well, Noah, this was a great first date. I thank all of our listeners for joining us. And again, we went full audible. I had a whole list of questions about the book, and I was like, we got to talk about this. And that is, that's the curve, right? That's how do you adapt to the curveball when you've been getting fastballs all day is something that I'm always proud of, and I love the challenge, and it's something that I've learned. I've learned from Noah's writing over the years, and from $1 Million Weekends. So I thank you, man. It's fun to be in this tribe with you.
I'm proud of you. I mean, give yourself props, and for anyone out there that's willing to take a chance. You said, hey, I at least want to try it, and especially if you're a father. I was talking to another guy. He's like, I wanted to lead by example, where I didn't want to tell my kids, go follow your dreams. And you didn't follow your dream, and you did. And, it didn't work. It worked out good, but then you just stuck with it as well. And, what an example you're showing for your kids.
Oh, thanks. I'll wrap on this quick story. When I quit, everyone, and I didn't have a plan, I had done the experiments. Everyone said, that's the riskiest thing. You just had a kid. That's so risky. And my response was, what's riskier is having a kid that watches their dad just do something for money. We in there? You're the guest. All right. Where do we go find?
Where
buy the book? We'll put the links in the show notes. Yeah. Where else?
I got to go cook the girlfriend chicken before I get in trouble. I'm already 10 minutes over. All right. $1millionweekend.com. Check Khe's stuff if you want to get a little more inspiration, a little kick in the ass, and the formula that's worked for me and others. $1millionweekend.com.
Thank you, Noah.